Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Today's video, I've got a couple of brand new Heimdallr watches with me. Now, as you can see in the bottom left hand corner, it says paid promotion. That's because Heimdallr has given these watches to me in order for me to review and then do whatever I need to do after with them. So let's open the boxes. Now, we are familiar with these boxes, so we don't need to spend an inordinate amount of time looking at the boxes. So let's take the watches out. Unboxing done. Now, you'll all know by looking at these instantly what these are. This is the Heimdallr Sea Ghost full titanium dive watch. Now, it's an homage to the Omega Seamaster, and in particular the limited edition 007 No Time to Die homage. Now, Heimdallr have very kindly sent me two options. I've got the black dial and I've got the white dial. Okay, so the full titanium Heimdallr Sea Ghost. Now, Heimdallr have done a really good job, especially the back end of 2020 with them releasing the Monster homage. I love that watch. I love the color options, and they also soon after released this Seamaster. Now, this watch in particular, this design in particular, or homage, is a very popular actual model. You've got a number of watch brands from China have made their own interpretations of these. So you've got Philida, you've got Pagani, and you've also got Parnis and Bliga that have made a homage to the Seamaster. Of course, the Seamaster is a very iconic watch, extremely popular, and the fact that it ties in with 007, No Time to Die, and all that. So that aside, we've got the Heimdallr version here. Let's take a look at this. Let's see how good this is. Let's look at all the specifications and the features, and just, is it as good as people say it is, and is it as good as people want it to be? So before we start covering the specifications, if you haven't done so already, this is your first time watching the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you're up to date with all the latest reviews. Also, make sure you check the description for any links. So the Heimdallr Titanium Sea Ghost. Specifications are as follows. Full titanium case, including bezel, case back, and crown. You've got a screw down case back and a screw down crown. You've got a aluminium bezel insert. You've also got a top hat AR coated sapphire crystal. The watch runs a Seiko Epson NH35 movement, and the watch gives you 200 meters of water resistance. You also have a helium release valve, although I suspect that's just a dud and just there for aesthetic purposes. Color options and strap options. The colors that you can get in this model is the one on my left, this black dial with the vintage beige bezel insert, and you also get this white dial with a black bezel insert, and you also get a blue on blue, so blue bezel insert and a blue dial, which I don't have with me. Strap options, you can have the watch in this mesh strap, NATO strap, or you can choose to have it on a FKM vintage tropical style strap. Prices. So this watch is on the Heimdallr website for $240, and if it's the UK stock, it's about $250, and that equates to in British pounds 170 to 180 pounds. And as mentioned, Heimdallr do have UK stock, so if you want that quick delivery, you can also use that and get the watches delivered to you within a couple of days. Let's check out the dimensions. You do have a case diameter of 41 millimeters. You've got a lug to lug of just under 49 millimeters. The website actually states it to be 49.5, but I have confirmed it with my digital calipers. Now, the thickness of the watch is 13.5. You've got a 20mm lug width, and the actual weight of this watch on this mesh strap is 70 grams. So an extremely light watch. So now we've got the dimensions, specifications out the way. Let's take a closer look at some of the design features. Let's break this watch down element by element and just really focus and zoom in on what we can see. So let's start off with the dial. So pretty much standard dial design. So you've got a mixture of printed and applied features. So under the 12 o'clock, you have that printed shredded shark or skeletonized shark logo, and just above the 6, you've got Sea Ghost in red, which contrasts the white dial nicely, and it does match the tip on that red seconds hand. You've also got automatic 200 meters below that. You've got a printed frame around the date function, which is at the 6 o'clock. Now, the applied markers, you've got a mixture of circular and baton indices. Baton at the 9 and 3, and at the 12 you've got a dual marker and circular markers in between. Now there is a frame around these markers. Usually we see polished, but these are, they look to be almost sandblasted. You do have a printed chapter ring also around the dial, which is always handy. Now just have a look at alignment. Now overall I think everything does line up pretty well with the bezel and the hour markers, so that's okay. Now let's turn our attention to the one in black. So the black one is slightly different. You've got, of course, a different color option, but you also got some nice color matching going on. So same design features, but you just got a contrast in color. So the Heimdallr logo at the 12, the date frame, the actual color of the applied indices, and the chapter ring is this beige sort of color. Now the lume that's applied to these hour markers is that vintage style lume. You also got that same color lume present on the hands. And what's interesting here is to see that the date wheel is actually matched to the dial, which is a nice touch, adds to the symmetry of the dial and just makes it look uniform. Now let's take a closer look at the hands. Now, of course, this watch is homaging the Omega Seamaster. Well, you do see a kind of a rough finish, but that's just because the hands are actually brushed, and you've got the same skeletonized sword style hands, and with that red lollipop with that red tip, which is a nice touch as it matches that red Sea Ghost lettering above the 6. In terms of finish, you know what, from here it looks absolutely okay. I don't see any burr or any defects to the hands. Let's see if that's the same on the white one. So just a slightly different contrast. Yeah, there is something present just there, just below on the back of that triangle on the sword hand. You can see a bit of excess burr. So slight QC issue there, I would say. You can also see a very slight blemish just above the 4 o'clock, but it's a very, very, very small speck, but it is present. So overall, I think on both dials, they've done a good job. You know, they do homage what they are, you know, meant to homage, of course, the Seamaster, and I like the general construction of the dial. I do like that they've matched the date wheels to the actual dials. That's always a nice touch. Shows there's a bit of thought behind it. So let's look at now the bezel insert. Aluminium, as opposed to what you usually get ceramic. Now I don't mind that when, you know, watchmakers or brands choose aluminium for a reason, knowing full well that ceramic option is available. I think it just adds to just a bit of a more enthusiastic touch. So I think the bezel, it's a nice bezel, aluminium. The infills do match the style of the dial and the color of the dial really well. Nothing that stands out in terms of poor QC or any defects. At the 12 o'clock, you've got that skeleton triangle logo with that pip at the 12 o'clock. So the pip is on top of the bezel, but it's not sharp or it's not protruding that we see on sometimes on the Heimdallr watches. It's actually sitting in this circular ring. Let's move over to the black one. Similar situation. It is a clean, crisp bezel. Now, of course, what does that mean over sapphire? Well, sorry, what does that mean over ceramic? Well, you all know that ceramic is pretty much scratch resistance, whereas this aluminium, expect it to get dinks and scratches if you're not very careful with the watch. Now let's look at the sapphire crystal. Now this is a top hat sapphire crystal. It's worth mentioning that it is an actual top hat where you can see how it sits. And you also got these curved edges. Usually what some watch companies like to do is just stick a thicker crystal, so it looks top hat, but you can clearly tell if they are or not. So you do get the distortion around the edges. Now this does have air coating, but what you'll notice when you look at it straight on, the air coating isn't getting in the way when you look at the watch straight on. You do see these blue highlights around the crystal edge, which I think next to the black and just what's going on the dial, it does look, I don't really mind it. You know, sometimes we do see a lot of AR coating on watches where they get in the way of the dial. So of course on angles when you do meet glare, you will see that AR coating, but actually dead on, you just get these really nice hints of blue on either side, and that's also present on the white one. And on the white one, it just makes it look just slightly pearlescent. I think it's a nice touch. I don't know if they've intentionally gone to do anything like that. And also what you'll notice with this box style crystal, look how close the dial sits to the watch. Great legibility, awesome visibility as well. So we've spoken about the bezel insert, and what does a bezel insert sit on is the actual bezel. Let's check it out. Let's see how this rotates. Okay, so this one's a little bit stiff. Let's see if we can get that going. Alignment's okay. Let's check the black one. Perfect alignment. Now that feels and sounds crunchy as hell. And you know what? That's down to a couple of things for me. I'd say namely three. So number one is the material. It's titanium. In fact, Heimdallr do mention on their website, they give you like a disclaimer pre-warning you that the bezel, rotation, the sound and feel is not going to be like it is on stainless steel, nor are they the same as when you see them on the bronze watches. So yes, I can understand that. Second thing is, which I think is a bigger contributing factor to this, you know, gritty sort of feel, and just to kind of describe it, I think it's difficult to gauge individual clicks. On a lot of the clicks you do hear like a double click sometimes. Yeah, so it just does sound gritty. It's got a bit of a grittier sort of feel to it as well. Yeah, the second thing I'd say is just the thickness of the bezel. It is quite thin, very light titanium as well, and depending on the mechanism they've opted for, if they've got those serrated teeth underneath the back of the bezel, it is going to give you a very rough feel. With this, you ideally want a very tactile, you know, individual click type of bezel rotation, but this is it's just not working at all. I mean, yeah, I would find this difficult to live with, but you know, between the two, I think this seems to be quite common. Oh, this one's a lot better now. Yeah, but it's still not light. But I think, you know, is this inherent to the fact that they're using titanium, and you know, is it due to the design? Who knows. Bezel done. Now let's look at the functionality of the watch. Let's look at the crowns. So let's unscrew down the crown. Solid pop. It's a very nice crown. Look at the splines there. Nicely done. Good resistance on the winding. Pull it back. See the date change. I like that they've gone for a date window at 6 o'clock. It just helps the symmetry of the dial. So you've got this 9 and the 3 hour markers. A fairly symmetrical dial. So click it out to the full position there. I'm gone before. Let's turn the date fully. And then the movement hacks. Smooth on the screw down as well. That's good. Now you also have another crown here, this helium release valve, and that also screws up and down. Now I mentioned just at the start, I don't know how functional this is. I don't know if it's actually real. You know, I wouldn't like to say it is without knowing specifically, but I'd say it's there probably purely for the aesthetic, just so it matches the Seamaster Homage. And what you don't actually see, sorry, so it does match the Seamaster. What you don't see are helium release valves on watches that are rated 200 meters. You don't usually see that. You see that on watches that are 500 and above. But I understand this is a Homage, so they tried to put that on there. But they do work. They're screwed up and down. They're not just stuck in the case without you being able to move them. But as a helium release, I don't know. I'm not too sure. Let's have a quick check on this one. Very nice. And the fact that it has a NH35 movement in there, you know, it is going to be very reliable. It's going to be reasonably accurate as well. Usually they run well under 10 seconds a day. So yeah, let's go in. Let's look at the case. Now, I did say when I reviewed the monster that I hope Heimdallr do continue this attention to detail when it comes to the case, because as you should have saw in my review that the Heimdallr monster, that case was done exceptionally well, and when I compared it to the Gen 1 and 2, you know, it stood its own ground, to be fair. So let's look at this case, and instantly what you will see with the Seamaster case, there's just so many facets and curves present on a relatively simple case shape. So if we go along the sides, the first thing I would like you guys to pay attention to is just between the lugs here. Just look at that chamfer there in between, and just look at the cross brushing. So you've got brushing that goes straight up into the corner, which meets brushing, linear brushing along here, and just that's done really, really well. So Heimdallr have upped their game in terms of case finishing. Just go around the side, you can just see these grooves here, these curves, very smooth, no sharp edges, and again, straight horizontal brushing. So just looking for consistency, very, very consistently done. The case finish is really nice. Very impressed. No sharp edges on the lugs. Let's just have a look at the case back. Quite a large case back. Heimdallr, all fully brushed. 200 meters, sapphire crystal, automatic movement, titanium. 100% titanium, in case you guys thought it was 97%. So let's have a look at the lume. That's something we didn't have a look at yet. So there we go. So on my left is the white dial Heimdallr C3 Super Luminova. So what you usually expect from Heimdallr, you've got the pip at 12 o'clock, all the hour markers are illuminated, and just look at the hands. That lume actually travels down the sides of those hands, which are skeletonized. Very nice touch. And that lollipop on the second hand, great visibility. You're going to have great longevity. I've not had any Heimdallrs with issues with lume at all. Now if we switch over to the one with the black, this is that vintage lume. The camera's barely picking it up, so I think this needs a bit of help. You can barely make it out there. So the vintage lume, to be honest, I haven't seen anything much different to what you can see on the Heimdallr. It's not the fact that it's poor. This is what vintage lume just looks like. It's not as bright. So let's give this a little boost with a UV lamp. So it's picked up brightness, and you can see the lume's applied the same way as it is on the one with the white dial, but it's not going to last as long, and it will degrade pretty quick. Time for the wrist shot. So this is my first experience with this Milanese mesh style strap. I've not really ever owned a watch or used this strap before. I've not really sized it properly because I had to get my hand through it. So the strap, 316 stainless steel, nice fit. It is very comfortable. You know, it's not catching hair or anything like that. And there's my wrist at 6.5 inches, diameter 42 millimeters, lug to lug below that below that 49. So the dimensions are on point. Looks good on a 6.5 inch wrist, so it look even better on bigger wrists. And it's just that lightweightness of the watch is incredible. It's like you're not even wearing a watch. So that is something you're gonna have to get used to. But it looks good on the wrist, feels good. The strap itself, it does have ownership by Heimdallr, so they've signed that little safety buckle there with that shark. And you've got this milled clasp here. Very well done. So that's nice, well built. Let's try the NATO. Now if you're a follower of this channel, you know that I really do not like NATOs, but I don't mind wearing one for the purpose of this review. There we go, grey strap. Let's tuck that back in with the white dial. I am actually quite drawn to this white and black version. I think it's quite refreshing. It's actually a very nice color. Yeah, NATO, it does fit well. Again, looks okay on the wrist. So let's summarize. So I've got two confessions for you viewers out there. The first one is, this is the second time around I'm doing this review, so I am pretty annoyed. I did the full review, I transferred some source files, and then when I went back into my application to finish off the video, boom, gone. Annoyed the life out of me because I spent some good time on this. Second confession, this, you know, the Omega Seamaster, let's talk about that. I'm not a fan of that design. It just does not suit my personal taste. I have never been drawn to it. So as far as the homages go, do I want them? No, you know, but that is purely subjective. That's just me. They don't really suit my personal taste. However, you know, that allows me to be very objective in reviewing these watches. So looking at the watch as I usually do, looking at the build quality, the fit, finish, function, you know, let's give you my overall thoughts on the watch. So let's give you the pros. Fit, finish, function, the watch has been made really well. You know, it's a different kind of material, full titanium. I spoke about the case. You know, I've got really a very good high opinion of the case. It's been done exceptionally well. It's one of the nicer things on the watch. And then you've got the use of the aluminium bezel insert, which is for me a plus, as it just, you know, makes the watch a bit better in my opinion. Not all the time, you know, if they put a ceramic on there, I feel it might take away from the watch slightly. Gives it a more authentic look, ironically. Also, I like the way they've done the dial. I like generally the quality of the hands that I've seen here, and I do like how the crown moves. So fit, finish, function, of course, that top sapphire crystal, you know, and the lume on the white dial, very good indeed. Cons, yeah, so I think a couple. So one is the bezel. Yes, it's titanium, and you know, it might move this way, it might move that way, it might be a little bit different, but I think they really should have done a bit more development on the actual bezel, because I'd say it borders on some parts of the bezel when you're rotating it, and I can see it in terms of consistency. It might just touch on the unacceptable. You know, there are some bezel movements that you can live with, but with this one in particular, I'd say it's okay now, you know, on certain parts of it, but it might even go across the actual unbearable for me. You know, if a watch has a really bad bezel, then it's just no point personally for me to have it, because yes, I don't dive, but I just like to rotate the bezel, and it's something which is a functioning part of the watch. So the bezels are so a little bit tricky. The second thing is, it's actually going to be quite specific to this watch in particular, this exact one here. I think I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about the dial. There's a slightly blemish present there, a very small dust. Well, I don't think it's dust. I think it's just a little speck. And then just that bit of flash on the actual hand. So yeah, that's it. Other than that, you know, I'd say I'd give it a good 6.5, right? I mean, if the bezel was fine, I'd give it an 8, but a good solid 6.5 on the watch. A very good attempt. I'm actually pleased that they stuck, you know, they carried on that case quality. You know, that's quite important to me as well. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you everyone for watching.